Okie dokie. We've done a whole number of things on this retreat, as you know, working with all three bodies, aligning them, mending them, retrieving power. Yesterday going through the complete basic visualizations of both subtle bodies. So let's continue from there. We've spoken also about the different facets, the different, what is that, characteristics of the basic state. Jussi just mentioned the three that are commonly, like the three most basic ones, let's put it this way without expanding on it that much, but you have clarity or cognizance, selfless cognizance, selfless knowing. Then you have aliveness, softness, and then you have groundedness, bedrock, peacefulness. These three are often mentioned in Mahamudra or Dzogchen teachings. But we've also covered connection with ethics, the facet of sincerity and honesty. What other facets we have we have touched on this retreat? Kindness, of course, the friendliness aspect, of course, compassionate aspect. So quite a lot of things, but it's all for us not to get confused about so many things. We are still talking and practicing about our very experience. So it's a felt, lived experience, lived recognition. Yeah. But of course we use all these things, speaking about the characteristics of our own wakeful nature, and use all these practices to help us discover it, and to, through discovering it, cultivating it, understanding it, establishing it, becoming it. So we need quite a bit of things. If methods are too simple, there's only one or two practices, or like a very few, and there's very little explanations, it is highly probable that it won't get that far. I've seen this so many times. I experienced it myself back in the day. I've seen it with so many people that people fall in love with very simple approaches because I guess that kind of simplicity speaks to so many people. But once again, we have three bodies and two of them are invisible, and those two are the most important when it comes to the path and art and realization of enlightenment. Right? So that's an interesting point, isn't it? Two most important bodies related to enlightenment are invisible. We only see this physical one. So, and like I often say that if we look at the physical body of a human being with so many organs and tubes and channels and liquids flowing here and there, different kinds of cells here and different kinds of cells there, soft and hard tissues, and it's so complex, it's so varied. Patricia, how many years you have studied medicine?
Medicine?
Yeah. How many years?
Okay, 8 years in university and around 15 years in...
Altogether 15 years.
Some training.
Yeah, you're still training.
Yeah, I'm still in training, but it's my second specialty.
Yeah.
But if I did only one, it was going to be 7 years after 8 years of university.
Okay.
Plus 1 year of the examination.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I'm just asking because we have a medical professional here present. I wanted to ask her that, get some kind of idea, She has already one type of specialty, but it took her 15 years full-time study and practice. So same thing with subtle bodies. It takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of information and understanding information through practice. So I'm just making that point that if it's too simple, probably won't work. If it's too complex, then might be too complex, might be going into too much details. I remember one example of this from I remember many years ago some Theravada meditator telling me there is this basic Vipassana practice called noting practice, noting thoughts and labeling mental and emotional content. So the way how it's practiced is that when you sit down and you're tuned into your mind, you start labeling thought. Another thought arises. Heat, warmth in the heart, feeling the soles of the feet. Silence, silence. Feeling air in the nose. Thought arises, remembering a memory. So you keep labeling, noting what you're feeling, all the things that you're feeling. And I remember this friend telling me many years ago that some practitioners develop this noting ability to extremes. And there had been this one Theravada master from Burma or Thailand who said that he's able to notice over 90 events in his mind in a second. It's extremely developed skill, but do you need that? Is it not necessary? Probably not. So that's my point. That's an example of what is too much. It's not very useful. But we need to have some details, and I hope and I believe that on this retreat and other retreats, I hope to be able to convey what is essential information and essential practices to get the job done and to progress, to increase our experiential understanding and to really advance, so that the goal of full enlightenment, Buddhahood in this life can actually be reached. Yeah. All right. So all these techniques that we've gone through, practicing metta, maitri with traumas or strong negative selfish emotions, mending practice, power retrieval, emotional suppression in reverse, and then alignment of the three bodies, please use them. These are not really, if we are very strict about categories, they are not tantric practices because there are no empowerments involved. But at the same time, they are kind of tantric because you're working with the full scope of your subtle bodies. And it really doesn't get more tantric than that. One of the categories of highest yoga tantra is, Maha yoga is deity yoga practices, deities. Anu yoga is channel practices, meaning nadis, chakras, prana. And then there is Ati yoga, which is the yoga of Dzogchen. So non-meditation, Jussi mentioned the term. So when we are working with channels and subtle bodies instead of deities, that's categorically Anu yoga. Anu yoga. Anu means it's a term, technical term, referring to extremely small particles. Sanskrit word. Extremely small particles. There is, like we know, physically, but also non-physically, there is vast world around us. You know, we know from what do you call that? NASA practices space science. Is that what you call it? Space science? You know, we all know how vast the space is, that it just keeps going. And in yogic teachings, it is often referred to as macrocosm, macrocosmos, what is outside us, both externally and internally. But if we start looking at our subtle bodies and physical body, trillions of cells, thousands and tens of thousands of channels, prana coursing through, that's a cosmos on its own, isn't it? Just incredible and fascinating beings we are. And to me, it has been a very inspiring and rewarding journey, the years that I've practiced to really dive into my body, my mind, my energy. Because there's so much to discover. So much to understand. At one point of this retreat, I referred to like basic yogic or dharmic concepts such as rebirth, what happens after death, law of karma, such things. And I recommended you to verify yourself. You know, everybody, like I said, everybody speaks of these things, but how many really know how it actually works? That's the thing. We need to have our own certainty about everything. Otherwise, we are accepting second-hand information and taking it as belief. And that is never ever good enough. Never. That's actually what Shakyamuni Buddha said. But how many Buddhist practitioners are actually doing that? Yeah, not many. He said that don't accept my teachings based on belief alone, but study yourself if what I'm saying is correct or not. That's what he said. So on this retreat, as well as recent other teaching events that I've taught, I've spoken about Buddha nature, Tathagata Garbha, perspective of Dharma, which originates from Shakyamuni Buddha's third turning of the wheel of Dharma. So, like I explained, The first and second turnings of the wheel of Dharma deal with emptiness or selflessness, and then emptiness and compassion paths. So we have the vehicle of that ends up in Arhat attainment, first turning, and then Bodhisattva path of emptiness and compassion that ends in on 10th Bhumi, becoming a Samyak Sambuddha, fully enlightened Buddha. And then there's the third turning, which deals with Buddha nature teachings. And this third turning, understanding ourselves as Buddhas, taking it from the beginning, having the understanding that we all have Buddha nature. From the beginning, always had it. Every single moment, every single day, every single night, we have this Buddha nature. Yesterday we had it, tomorrow we'll have it, now we have it. So this starting point is kind of unique in the world of Dharma. There are so many methods that don't begin there, don't begin from Buddha nature. But when it comes to Vajrayana, tantric vehicle, what do you call that? Like a, should I call it Tathagata Garbhayana, like Buddha nature vehicle? It's this understanding is there from the beginning, and it's the path, and it's the attainment. So make your practice so strong that you don't have doubts about it. Don't think that you're special in the sense that, Padmasambhava and Jesus could do it, but I can't. No, you are not special in that sense. You are not better than ancient masters. You're not worse than ancient masters. And also what is important, we had a bit of discussion about it on this retreat over here. Often male masters and patriarchs are discussed as Dharma masters, but there has been many female masters. I think that at the moment when we have 20 or so people in our Sangha who have finished Bhumi purification, half of them are women, if not a little bit more. So, doesn't matter which gender you are, same potential is there. There's no inferiority with either gender. Actually, now I'm ruining just what I said. Padmasambhava said back in the day that, if women have excellent merit, excellent readiness, and karmic connections, then they might be better practitioners than men. But actually, neither gender is inferior. Never say you can't. And if your mind says that, just acknowledge that the mind says that. Acknowledge that it's coming from some sense of insufficiency, probably a pattern. You've been hurt at some point. Maybe you've been told that you can't achieve things and that's why you have low self-esteem. Acknowledge that. But then we can change our condition. Make friends with any habits and patterns of trauma and negative emotions. Make friends. Heal them. Give them your love, your attention, your kindness. So when we look at Amrita Mandala, as you know, I've said it many times, it can be different with future practitioners of our tradition. But the first generation that is still taking place of practitioners, we only had the path of wisdom and clarity, so wisdom emptiness teachings. So that's why, and we didn't have the path of healing and light until now. But that's why we have people who have purified their causal bodies, their aura systems, and are now working with meridian systems, as you know. And what we have been doing on this retreat, and what I just said, of making friends with traumas and negative emotions and selfishness that happens and is arising in meridians. That, for us Amrita Mandala practitioners, is the practice of third turning of the wheel of Dharma. Which, when we finish it, we will graduate as Samyak Sambuddhas, fully enlightened Buddhas, in Vajrayana language, who have light body or rainbow body. There was a question at one point about Chokchen Tagal practices. And in one of my talks I explained how in Chokchen there is also Kadak, emphasis on emptiness first, and then meditating on the richness and fullness and colors and flavors and expression of Buddha nature. It is like that for us too. But in Amrita Mandala there is, as you know, how many times you heard me say the word trauma on this retreat alone, there's a lot of emphasis on healing of trauma because trauma is so common these days, and traumas of modern people, I think, are pronounced and more complex, more varied than perhaps previously in history. I might be wrong with that, but I kind of have that such hunch. So that's why in Amrita Mandala, and I think it applies principally to Western practitioners, that there would need to be like a solid focus and practices for healing traumas and emotional negativity from the meridians. So that's the reason why there's so much emphasis on that and different practices to accomplish that. as long as we are practitioners and haven't yet attained twofold enlightenment of wisdom body and light body, we need the support of bodhicitta and generating bodhicitta. Bodhicitta itself, from absolute perspective, is our Buddha nature. And it's logical that if we haven't perfectly 100% aligned with it, haven't become it, then we need to keep focus on it, right? So we've focused on number of facets of our perfectly wakeful nature on this retreat, and I would like us to focus on one very special facet that relates to this third turning of the wheel, healing of traumas, healing negativity from meridians, selfishness, and that is happiness. The facet of happiness. Happiness is a little bit, the word dodgy, or was mentioned yesterday, dodgy or tricky in the sense because happiness can be extremely superficial experience, or one might be happy experiencing being in the experience of gross blissful states, intoxicated in bliss. Somebody who's high or drunk is experiencing happiness. But here I'm talking about the happiness, the sukha, maybe I could say ananda, which means bliss, of Buddhas. So one thing that is very interesting about Dzogchen method and Amrita Mandala is that first focus on emptiness. First releasing self-based habits from causal body, the subtler of the subtle bodies. Getting that done first. Because when you do that first, then you have the support of constant clarity. It's like kind of like having the dual visualization on all the time. Constant clarity. When you start meditating on the richness, fullness, joyfulness, blissfulness, happiness, which will then heal your traumas and reveal the light body. In tantric scriptures, I can't really remember which text I read it from, but somewhere out of the 500,000 books on tantra, there is classification of 4 or 5 different kinds of blisses. So I remember that tantric text, it refutes 3 or 4 of them and only accepts one of them, the subtlemost of these blisses. And the technical term for that kind of bliss, that kind of happiness, is Sahajananda. Sahajananda. Sahaja means completely natural, completely spontaneous. So this refuting gross blisses, high, there are spiritual communities who chant the names of Krishnas and Ramas, and they're high. Yesterday we had a brief discussion about fool's compassion, where people start wearing these, heavenly angel-like clothes and start sighing, oh, this kind of fool's compassion, some call it. So refuting those kind of things, because the thing is, we need to be specific, we need to have details. But there is this one kind of bliss that is accepted and embodied by light body Mahasiddhas. This subtlemost, very rich, full, complete kind of bliss or happiness. Sahaja bliss, Sahaja happiness. And that is lasting happiness, just like Buddha nature itself. Through meditating on emptiness of mental phenomena, we see that these things in our mind don't have solid selves or solid entities, though we believed them to have solid entities and independent life for so long. And then when we advance and graduate emptiness, then we are born into this so-called Buddha nature. And then we don't need to worry about this emptiness, wisdom stuff anymore. It's already in the pocket, figuratively speaking. And then you can realize that, oh, it's full, it's very rich. And it's more solid than the bedrock, because as you know, bedrock also some can shake. Loaded with happiness. This thick, light, honey-like, pure, golden radiance. Sukha, happy, joyous, the opposite of dukkha, suffering, pain. And there is a technical term, Mahasukha kaya. Mahasukha kaya, great happiness body. Which can be used synonymously for rainbow body, which is Sambhoga kaya in Sanskrit. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, if not in every talk he gives, maybe in every second he gives, he says that all beings are looking for happiness. But because there is no understanding what real happiness is, it becomes a vicious loop, a vicious wheel of chasing happiness. But there is this most fundamental happiness already in us. This Sahaja Ananda, Sukha Ananda, Mahasukha, great ease, great happiness. All right. Now I have pointed out this original happiness, this great ease, great happiness. Stay with it. Lie down for a little bit. Let's continue. We have some time before a break. So let's continue with a body of great happiness, Mahasukha Kaya. In terms of practicing at home, the application is the same as with all other facets. And of course, any of these facets can be focused on one by one or all of them at once. However, when it comes to kindness and friendliness and happiness, joyfulness, meditating on love, in comparison to clarity, for example, there is much more healing power in these qualities. And same with happiness. One way to practice, cultivate any of these facets or this particular one, happiness, is to wish ourselves happiness and wish happiness for others. And wishing, by wishing, I mean verbally wishing. Saying silently or saying aloud, why not, if you like. Wishing happiness for oneself. May I be happy. And may I have the causes of happiness, the causes that make me happy. Same way, may other sentient beings be happy and have the causes to be happy. May I be happy, may others be happy, may our companions be happy, our children be happy, pets and family members be happy, friends be happy, and so on. That's the idea. So you simply keep cultivating it, bringing that happiness to be a lived experience. May all beings be free. May all beings be happy. One very important, actually decisive and definitive point about the whole Buddha nature and all of its facets is that it is not a state. It's not a state of mind or state of meditation. It's not a meditative state if we start looking at it and analyzing it. What do I mean by saying that Buddha nature is not a state and it is not, to be exact, attained, or you don't go into Buddha nature like you would enter some state and then exit it. And similarly, happiness is not a state. And here's how not. So, our Buddha nature, with all of its facets, it's not actually correct to say that it's like of underlying, because it's not lying under, it's not lying above. It's not a state where you go to abide, where you go to meditate. It's the opposite way around. When all the mental states, emotional states, states of meditation, which there are many types taught by many traditions, when we exit these states, states of mind, states of meditation, states of samsara, states of nirvana, is when recognition of our basic nature, Buddha nature, takes place. So it is kind of the opposite way around how we might be thinking. And that's why it is not a state. If we think of, for example, the emotional experience of negative emotions such as anger, it's kind of like when anger arises and it grabs a hold of us and we identify with it, it's kind of we are inside the cloud of anger. We are inside the energy of anger. What is a cloud like? In the case of anger or any other emotion or any type of meditation, a cloud is a three-dimensional state. Three-dimensional energy, which means that it has width, height, and depth. But this basic nature of ours, like I always say, is not three-dimensional, not four-dimensional, but it's non-dimensional. Which is a technical way of saying that it's not a state where you land on, it's not a state where you abide in, it's the opposite way. When you remain without entering any state, you don't abide anywhere. This is how it technically is, and it might give you a headache, like what the heck is he talking about? But generation after generation, masters have explained the same point. Like if you start reading Nagarjuna, for example, he's marvelous when it comes to describing how the nature of mind is from the emptiness perspective. And it can give you like serious headache because it's Nagarjunas and masters like him, they use language and concepts in a way that is profound. And of course, when we are not in that state, it might be difficult to connect and take time to connect with the meaning that they're trying to convey. But yeah, when we recognize our Buddha nature, it is not a meditative experience either. And the reason why I say that, the reason why we call meditation non-meditation, like a negation of meditation as a state, is because if we practice mindfulness meditation where you focus on a thing, on an object, and stay that way, you develop this one-pointedness and calm abiding, which is a state. You're in a state of calm abiding where your mental content and emotional content disappears or withdraws into the periphery of the mind. So you're in a momentary state, which is meditative, of course. It is not exactly samsaric because, all the mental and emotional elaboration, self-based elaboration quiets down. But it is not the experience of or recognition of our innate purity, and wakefulness doesn't take place either during practice of mindfulness, or there are like to be focused on a single object or to use the three-dimensional space around us as an object of meditation is also shamatha. But it's three-dimensional space. This is one category in Tibetan shamatha. Another example of meditative states are jhanas, dhyanas, which are what Shakyamuni Buddha practiced before he awakened, and apparently he taught it also after his awakening to those of Hinayana capacity, and are still practiced in Theravada and in some schools of Mahayana. But these are all momentary experiences. You cannot enter a jhana and never leave it. This is impossible. And there are yogis who can stay in jhanas, meditative absorptions, for very long periods of time, days, a week, sometimes weeks. There are living people like that who can do that, but the point is that because it is a state, you are forced to leave it sooner or later. You cannot stay with it because it is not an lasting, everlasting. It's not possible to be in that state forever. But with Buddha nature, it's the opposite way around. And something that is very important about happiness is that also the happiness of our ground state. There I said it, ground state. But what can you do? The thing about our Buddha nature, that all of its facets are actually qualities that our basic nature has. And as practicing bodhisattvas, we are simply discovering the qualities of it. The qualities of it that it always had, that were dormant, but that then through recognition become active qualities and lived qualities in our life. And these last, they don't go away. We simply turn them from being dormant, being passive, to being active and expressed. And so it is with happiness. And this is a very important point when I briefly mentioned that there are 4 or 5 kinds of blisses, 4 or 5 types of happinesses listed in some tantric text, which I already forgot. Negating, refuting the 3 or 4 of them is because of this. They are states. But this 4th one, sahaja bliss, sahajananda, natural happiness, natural bliss, is not a state. So when we recognize this basic happiness, original happiness, pristine happiness, of course the practice is always how that recognition meets with our bodies and what's stored there in the bodies. In this case, poisons, negativity, and traumas. Negativity coming from traumas. So, meeting of the two. Meeting of this pure being that has clarity, groundedness, happiness, with the baggage that we have left. With our motivation still being to uncover and reveal our Buddha nature in full, our basic nature in full, in all three bodies, to benefit all sentient beings. Again, when and if and when you notice some tensions in the body, unnecessary ones, let them relax into the recognition. Recognizing with whole body, whole body. When it's time to practice, we need to practice and not start drifting or be absent or forget the meaning. us to make the bones vibrate a little bit. Let's chant May all beings be free 3 times, followed by May all beings be happy 3 times. May all beings be free. May all beings be free. May all beings be free. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. All right, very good. Stay with that. You can lie down. Let's take 15 minutes lying down and then start meal break 1/4, and then have a meal break for 1.5 hours. So continuing 7:15 local time. Okay? 7:15 local time.